Happy New Year, everyone! It's officially 2023, and if you're anything like me, you want to make more money this year. I've wanted to do a video for a while now all about asking for a raise from a manager's perspective. What's going on behind the scenes for a manager? What are the considerations that they need to make? What strings can they pull that you may not even be aware of? I shared a survey a few weeks ago on LinkedIn and got responses from different managers in my network. So I want to share some of the insights I got from them about how their company and how they personally approach raise discussions and salary negotiations. And let's see what we learned together. All right, so the first question on my survey. Team members attempting to negotiate compensation is an uncomfortable process for me as a manager. And I asked people to rate this on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being that they disagreed with that, 5 being that they agreed. So this was kind of a fairly spread out group of answers. So just know your manager isn't totally comfortable either, and that's okay. Just come prepared with good evidence and we'll see where it takes us. So next question. How much control do you believe you have over your team members' compensation? The answers to this I thought were interesting because they were all right in the middle. So no one said that they thought they had no control and no one said that they have total control. This is just reality. I think especially if you're in middle management and you're not like the founder or owner of your company, there's going to be other people that have to approve of salary changes, generally this being the managers, management, or HR. When a team member is negotiating compensation, how much research do you as the manager do on market rates? And the answers were really spread out here. So 40% of people let HR do most or all of the research, 40% were right in the middle, and 20% did extensive research on their own. I personally fall in the extensive research camp. The reason being, companies will often have salary bands for a specific role. So for example, for, like a product owner role, they might have a salary range of $75,000 to $120,000. And generally people will come in, especially if they don't have experience, at the low end, and then they give you quote unquote room to grow, which is my least favorite phrase, besides the point. And then you can get raises and eventually grow to the top of that band, or you get promoted into a different one. There is a general market rate for a job, and that is, you could probably pull like really wide ranges for things on like Glassdoor or salary.com or, those type of websites. But then there's also your personal market rate. Everyone's market rate is different. So for example, if you are getting reached out to on the reg by Amazon, Facebook, Google, Netflix, companies that tend to pay very well, your personal market rate is probably higher than someone who is not getting reached out to by those companies. And as a manager, I want to look at the caliber of employee that I have that's negotiating with me and think about, would they realistically get a job at one of these companies? Because if they might, it's important for me to know the jobs that they would be looking at would be in this range that is at the top of this band. I might have to fight for them differently than I might for someone else who I don't think is as high of a performer or may not be as much of a flight risk or something like that, where it might change my approach of how I handle that discussion with HR. When a team member comes to a negotiation conversation with a supporting document, so as an example here, a PowerPoint deck with achievements, competitor compensation, etc., what do you see as the impact for the team member? 10%, one person said that they thought it would hurt the person's case, which I'm really fascinated by. I want to look at the comments and see what the details were there. 20% said that it would have some impact, and then 70% said that they thought it would help the person's case. I think the keys here are what you include in supporting documentation, loaded with information that has numbers behind it. So don't just say, hey, I saved us a bunch of money by leading this project. You can say, I led this project that saved the company $600,000 this year. That is a much more powerful statement. So you want to quantify your achievements whenever possible. And then also when you're doing that competitor compensation, pull jobs that are realistic that you would actually apply for. Don't just pull Amazon or Netflix or whatever, the top paying people in the market, because quite frankly, they're at the top of the market for a reason. You may not get hired there. If you have a LinkedIn and you get messaged by recruiters, look up the compensation for the roles that you personally get reached out to. And that might give you an idea of what your actual market rate is. Now, if it's a job that you would never consider because you look it up and the compensation's low, I think that's fine to discard. But if you're seeing things come your way that would make you significantly more money, those are the type of things that I would actually put in that documentation to say, Not only do I consider this a competitive salary, the reason why I consider it competitive is because I got reached out for it already. I personally put something like this together in a previous salary negotiation, and my HR rep actually reached out to me and told me that it was really helpful to have that documentation available to her. If you're interested in seeing how I would put together a document like that, definitely let me know in the comments and I can look at doing a future video on it. If a strong team member is asking for a raise and I believe it's a fair ask, I will do whatever I can to get it for them. This one made me so happy. Every respondent said agree or strongly agree. I think this is a really important lesson for everyone that's watching this to take away from this video. If you believe that your boss thinks that you are a strong performer, do your research on what is a true fair ask for your personal market rate and ask for it, because they will try to get it for you. Now, you may come to them and say, I've done the research and I think I should be getting paid 10% more. And they might say, I don't think that's realistic. And they might come back to you with a 5% raise or a 7% raise, and that is better than you would have had if you had not asked. So definitely ask. I have at least one team member that I think is underpaid that I wish would ask for higher compensation because it makes it easier to fight for. This one was interesting. It was a pretty solid 50-50 split on whether or not people had this or not. I'm really curious about these answers, and I wish I had asked for more context because I don't know if people responded that they disagreed because they don't have someone that's underpaid or because they don't think it would make it easier to fight for. But 50% either way said that they do think someone's underpaid and that it would be easier to fight for them. So what I would take from this answer, asking is going to light a fire under your manager's butt to actually have the conversation with HR. Whether or not it makes a difference on how easy it is to get, the responses seem mixed. Now we're getting into the part of the survey where I asked about people's experience with a specific company and their raise cycles. Now, the reason why I want you guys to pay attention to this is timing your ask is important in order to make sure that you can be successful. First question, during your annual raise cycle, what best describes the time frame at your company between when managers submit raise information, so like entering it into an HR tool for approval, until raises are formally announced to team members? And while the answers are definitely spread out, 67% of respondents said it was 2 months or more. For example, if you find out about raises February 15th, that means your manager is probably having some conversations mid-December, if not further back, because this is when they're actually entering in their recommendations. They might even be backing it up further. During your annual raise cycle, how long before raise information is submitted to the management team members to begin discussing or evaluating possible raise amounts? So for example, the manager that is responding to this, when are they starting to have those conversations with their managers about what's reasonable? So it looks like 65% of the answers were 4 weeks or less. So if you combine this question with the previous one, there's in general probably a 2.5 to 3.5 month lead time for many companies here. There are certainly ones that are shorter, and I don't want to discount that, but this is where you should start thinking about when you're going to ask. Flip back through your email and figure out when you got that document that gave you your merit increase for the year. And think to yourself, I probably need to have a conversation about my salary if I want to negotiate it at least 3 months before that, to have it on their radar and to give them time to do their own research if they are one of the people that does it, and to have the appropriate conversations with HR and their management in order to set you up for success. It's interesting, I forgot I asked about this. So I had a big question here that said, check all the relevant things you consider when determining annual raises. So we had 10 responses here, so they could check as many as they want. 70% of those people said that they are given a set budget per person that they start with. So as an example, if you have a set budget per person of 2.5% per team member, most likely people are gonna get the budget. 40% said that they have a discretionary pool to work with for additional annual raise amounts. So let's say that extra pool of money is 10 grand. They might split that across their 2 highest performers who they think are slightly underpaid and give them each an additional $5,000 bump in addition to budget level increase that they were given for each person. 60% said that in order to give a bigger raise to one team member, I may have to take raise money away from another team member. I'm going to pretend that I have two people on my team, Sally and George. Okay. Sally and George, to make things simple, make the same amount of money. So Sally's a super high performer and George has really struggled this year. I have a budget of 2.5% raise that I can give each person. Now, I want to give Sally a higher raise to thank her for the things that she's done this year. We're going to give Sally 3.5%. And in order to do that, I need to lower someone else's raise amount. So I'm going to take 1% from George's budget. So George may only get a 1.5% raise, whereas Sally gets a 3.5% raise. And that's just how it works. Like, I just want you guys to understand that these are the decisions that managers are making behind the scenes that you might not be aware of. So 40% of respondents said that they are allowed to adjust someone's bonus. And I think this is a really good negotiating point if you do get bonuses or if you get equity. So if you're running into a roadblock on salary, so for whatever reason, you're at the top of your pay band or HR just won't move, it's always worth asking if you can just get more in a bonus. There's also things called spot bonuses. I haven't personally run into them in my career, but I know people that have, where they can just get a bonus on the spot of, a couple $1,000s for doing something great. Money is money. I mean, it's ideal to make sure it's built into your salary, but getting it one time is definitely better than not getting it at all. So 70% of people said that their suggested raise amounts must be approved by at least one other party. So as an example, my management, HR, etc. So this gets back to what I was saying earlier about how much control your manager has. Most of us have to go through some sort of approval process. No one said that they could adjust other benefits like PTO. As great as a negotiating power that would be, if you could negotiate your vacation up, it's not typically something your manager is going to have control over. And then one person wrote in their own answer and they said that raises are done centrally through HR and usually a flat rate across the board. So again, that doesn't seem like it's the norm for the respondents here, but that is how some companies approach it. All right, so I also had a question that just asked, is there anything else you'd like to share? And I got a long-winded answer, so I'm going to insert my own commentary in here as well. Sometimes over-preparation can hurt you in a raise negotiation. If you're underpaid at your company relative to your peers, your manager likely already knows it. I think that's probably true. If you're not, your company might not pay at or above market rates, and there isn't much your manager can do about that. Bringing competitive information suggests that you're 1 foot out the door and elicits, if you think that's what you're worth, go get an offer for it. Do that research for yourself, but don't share it unless it's asked. Also remember in your research that some people have to make less than average for there to be an average salary. And that's also why I think that it's important for you to think about your personal market rate, not just the general market rate, because again, there's so many things involved in there being a market rate. There are a lot of reasons why below average might actually be great in your situation. It's a stretch role, transition, or other perks not included in the salary, etc. I look at market range for myself as well, but there are just so many grains of salt required to translate a market number into your situation that it's usually not a good can of worms to open in the discussion. So I'm just trying to mentally unpack the stretch roll example. If you are just starting to do a stretch roll, then yes, I can kind of see where you would be kind of at the bottom end of the pay for that type of role. But when it starts to become not a stretch roll, like where you're really performing at that level, you need to be compensated appropriately. And so I think it's important to do that research. And again, if they're not changing your pay, even though you've been doing that work for a while, then yeah, you probably should present them with that information. So bringing documentation and examples about where you've gone above and beyond and demonstrated that you're performing at the next level is much better received. I've never seen that backfire. This one makes total sense to me. Toot your own horn as much as you can during this type of negotiation. I've seen really strange reactions to employees being a flight risk. Sometimes the legitimate fear that an employee might leave is the only thing that will get them a raise. But sometimes it backfires and management gets unhappy that the employee is unhappy, gets the idea that the teammate isn't contributing effectively anymore because they're disgruntled or distracted, and it hurts their chances of getting a raise. I've also seen that if the company realizes it can repeatedly not give the employee what they've asked for and the employee will stay anyway, it hurts any future chances of a raise. It's a very fine line between being a team player and getting walked all over. Keep performing and be professional. I think this is where you You kind of have to know your situation and know your company. If you've never asked for a raise before, then maybe they're right. Maybe you approach it more with, a number that you're asking for, and you're not necessarily saying, this is what I would be getting paid at a competitor. But if you don't feel like they are listening to you or not taking you seriously, and you know that you are a strong performer within your team, then being a flight risk may not be an issue. It really depends on your manager. Because I've definitely had conversations with other managers that I work with personally. They really kind of get judgy about people being flight risks, whereas I just use it as another data point. Hey, I would rather not lose this person. I'd rather fight for them to get a higher salary. Or, you know what? There's only so much I'm willing to do for this person, and if they have to go elsewhere, I understand. I'm not going to fault them for it. Ultimately, if you believe you're worth it, go for it. If during this thought process you realize that you'd rather stay where you are because you get A or B perks, or you have an amazing team or manager, or you're learning a lot, then recognize that those things are worth legitimate value to you, and you don't have to chase a bigger salary. The upper end of the market range at another company may not have those perks that are important to you. This one is so true. There might be different health benefits. So my current job right now has IVF benefits. That benefit could be worth $30,000 to you if you're going to be doing IVF, whereas it's worth absolutely nothing to someone else. So you have to do your own analysis on what is important to you. If you want to try to ask for a raise where you're at, don't trust that the manager has the raise negotiation handled and leave it to them. They may sincerely want this for you, but you pushing for it professionally and persistently is part of what yields success. Unless they literally say, don't bring this up again, but that's probably not a good sign. Yeah. If your manager is a first-time manager, this goes double. Keep asking for updates. This is definitely true, but keep in mind that the whole process of getting raises approved, because it tends to go through multiple levels, it might take a while. So you're not going to get an overnight answer. But yes, definitely check in, especially if your manager is a first-time manager. Helps a lot. I really appreciate whoever wrote that because it gave me a different perspective on a few things. All right, so next comment. When employees come to a discussion asking for a raise and bringing up comps, and my peers at company X get blank, they need to be very careful that they are bringing up apples to apples jobs and companies. I've had that conversation go very poorly for folks because they start comparing themselves to jobs that are not comps. Again, know your market rate. You're really only going to get to that if you have applied for other jobs recently, or you're getting reached out to by recruiters and things like that, because that really does give you an idea of what's realistic. Be wary of providing a desired salary range. As a hiring manager, I've seen candidates give a range for their desired salary and they get offered a salary that was at the bottom of their asking range. Our VP determined the salary of every person in our department, even if that offer was less than the budgeted range for the position itself. I totally agree with this. Why would they not just go with the low end of your range? Because they know you'll be happy if you're in the range, right? So that's a really good one to keep in mind. I think talking about role expansion is good. I was hired to do XYZ and now I'm doing XYZ and ABC. Workload shifts and balances are good opportunities to reset comp expectations. On the other side of that coin, if you are not taking on an expanded role and if you're not getting consistently fantastic feedback, I would also consider not asking for a raise at that point in time. If you're asking for more money at every opportunity, it puts less weight behind the times when you do actually ask. And also, if you're chronically underpaid at that point, I would really think about if it's the right place for you. But that's just me personally. I hope you guys found this video as interesting to watch as it was for me to film. I know I certainly learned a couple things. If you enjoy seeing content like this, please like and subscribe. It really helps my videos reach more people. I'm also going to link a video here on the right on how to spot a good manager, because a good manager can really make or break your salary long term. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.